Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. Our free webinar series continues with Shane Haggerty today. He's going to be talking about Great Big Campaign, how to lead and leverage strategic and creative campaigns in your school district. A big mouthful, but it's like he's going to give so much awesome advice for you to really take your social media efforts and some of these campaigns to the next level. So I'm excited. I'm going to just do a quick introduction and then we'll get started. So all the slides today are going, and the recording, because I just hit record, everything's going to be sent to you. And so you can definitely take notes. I'm a big note taker myself. I just learn better that way. But just know that you are going to get everything sent to you. And we literally have so many states joining us right now. We've got Minnesota and Arizona and Ohio and Illinois and Virginia and Texas and California. And Ohio. We're super excited. So if you're on Twitter, which if you're not on Twitter, you should be, because it's a great place to connect with other school PR folks. But if you want to tag at Andrea Gribble, then tag Social School for EDU, and then also tag Shane Haggerty. So he's just Shane Haggerty, as his name is. Tweet that out. Let people know that you're here. Share what you're learning. That's one of the things that I love, is when I'm learning at a conference or a webinar like this, I can take a picture of the screen and I can shout out, hey, this was a great idea. And I know you're going to get a lot of great ideas today. So I always like to say you're in the right place if you're in the right place today listening to this webinar. If you feel like you've got a good handle on social media, but you're really looking to take that creativity to the next level with a campaign, a strategic campaign. If you're thinking about your school communications and your social media in a strategic framework to really leverage, you know, whether it be enrollment, whether it be, you know, a big initiative, you know, whatever kind of campaign, it might be you're asking for money, right? That Shane's going to give you a lot of ideas today that can be applied, but that's where you're in the right place. You're in the wrong place if you're just getting started with social media and you feel really overwhelmed at just like, I don't even know what to post on a daily basis, and you're just really feeling overwhelmed. I think that you might be in the wrong place. You can certainly listen, but I hate getting stressed out about social media. We at Social School for EDU like to break it down into manageable steps, but everybody's on like a different rung of the ladder. And I can tell you, Shane's at the top of the ladder. I look to him for a lot of advice. If you're just getting started, it could feel a little overwhelming. So I don't know if that's right, Shane. Do you think that's the right description?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right on. I think that you know, what we're going to talk about today is kind of taking pieces of what you're doing, maybe on social media especially, and integrating that into full-scale campaigns. Yeah,
and even beyond social media. So that's great. So most of you know who I am. I live in Woodbury, Minnesota. I own Social School for EDU. Our team's posted over 200,000 posts, probably over 300,000 now. We work with more than 70 districts. I'm married. I've got 6 kids. I love to talk. I'm a blogger, lots of articles out there. And we basically, the mission, you know, kind of Social School for EDU, we like to help schools create awesome social media. And we want to celebrate students and we want to connect communities. We want to give our communities a front row seat to the great things going on. And we like to say, you know, social media is really about celebrating your school, one story at a time, one moment at a time, you know, one video, all of that. And that's what, you know, I'm building that out consistently. So we have a lot of free support out there. We've got our blog, we've got a monthly free webinar, so a lot of Facebook, social media posts, and then we do management, we do coaching, we do graphics packages, because schools are busy, and even if you're one school PR shop or you don't have a school PR shop, you know, our partnership really makes sense. So without further ado, I'm going to get this thing kicked over to Shane. And Shane, I've known Shane for 3 or 4 years, connected with him on Twitter, and then actually got to meet him in person. So these are just a few of the stories that I grabbed, or pictures. So I got to be on Shane's podcast, which was super fun. That's my selfie face, Shane, because, you know, then you never have to wonder what face you're going to make, right? He did a Snapchat webinar, and that is still available on my website. And then down below is just a kind of teaser for his Breaker Society, which you're just wrapping up, and I'm sure you'll talk about that. I love podcasts because it turns my car into a classroom, and I can learn a lot. And he is the owner and president of Purpose Land, which is, his logo is up there. So just a little bit from me. Before I turn it over to Shane, he can tell us some more about himself. But Shane's had 20 years in education. So, Shane, you've really seen it change over the last 20 years. He's the owner and president right now of Purpose Land, but he was a former teacher, a former administrator in schools, and then he's worked in business and as school PR, a specific school PR person for a couple districts. And he's had award-winning campaigns, not only for school districts, but for government agencies, businesses, and more. So he is very qualified to be able to talk to you today about Great Big Campaigns. So I am going to switch it over to you, Shane, and with the joy of technology, it looks like it's working.
Okay, you can see my screen.
We can see your screen, so you're good to go.
All right. And can you see the full presentation?
We can. I just can see the slide marker on the bottom, too. So once that disappears, then we'll be able to see the full screen.
All right. Hopefully it's going to disappear. I don't want it to cover anything. All right. Is that going to go away, you think? Should I go?
Sometimes if you hit the space bar once and then hit the back button. Because sometimes that'll make it go away.
And hit the back.
Well, in preview mode, like when you're in presentation mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, hit play. It's not in presentation mode now. Now it's in there you go.
I had this problem the other time. I don't know why it won't go away.
And if you hit the space bar right now,
yeah.
Will it?
Oh,
there.
All right. All right. Sorry, guys. Well, so I'm going to talk about Great Big Campaign today. Now that I figured out that very basic technology thing, you want to believe that I am actually pretty good with technology because I couldn't figure that out right then. But no, it's great to be here. Great to be online with Andrea, and Andrea talked a little bit about me, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Andrea for the past 3 years, and she does great work with her company, and she's such a generous and giving person, so we're lucky to have her, and always happy to help her put on these free webinars. I think I know that there's a lot of people who have participated, and it was just a great way to learn some new things. So when she asked me to do this one, I was really excited because it was about something that I really love to do. You can see that slide, a little bit about me, but she kind of covered most of that. One of the things I always do like to talk about, though, because I always like to come at this with, you know, I was a teacher, I was an administrator, and worked basically in every function in the school district except the superintendency. And so I bring that to the table along with my PR experience, and I've had the opportunity to have these really two great careers kind of combine into a passion. So, and that's what I'm doing now with my company, Purpose Land, working with mainly school districts, associations right now as well, and really enjoying myself. It's been a year since I left my school district job and returned back to this company. So these are some of the clients that I've had. When I was putting this slideshow together, I always like to give credits to clients that I've worked with, and I was pretty, these are just some of them that I could fit on the slide, but I've had the opportunity to work with a number of great organizations, not just school districts, but businesses as well, some nonprofits, and have gotten to do a lot of fun stuff with these great clients. And I consider each opportunity working, especially with a school district or an educational organization, the opportunity to move public education forward for everybody. So that's really something that I take to heart. Let's see if we can move this slide. My slides are getting kind of stuck, so.
We can see, I can see it okay, I think.
All right, there we go. So one of the things with this presentation is called Great Big Campaign, and I'm going to kind of focus on some case studies of actual campaigns I've done and talk about why I've done that. When we talk about big, it's kind of relative. At the end of this presentation, I'll give you some takeaways to think about as you're kind of putting this all together. But why would you go big? Why would you do a strategic campaign and put some creativity into it? I know people have probably done bond issues and levy campaigns and elections and all that type of stuff. Those aren't fun to do. I mean, I know some people like to do those, but those are just, sometimes those are just necessary, right, to get those tax dollars so you can provide for students. But there are opportunities to go big and do a strategic campaign. And there we go. There we go. I have a little delay with my buttons. So one of those first reasons is I think just do a campaign just to build awareness and to educate people about issues or matters that you find that they get stuck on. I'm going to give some examples of that in my presentation with some of my case studies, but sometimes it's not always about selling something or raising money. It's not about asking people for stuff to give back to you. It's really about you giving back to the community, to your constituencies, targeting them to build awareness about issues and matters that are important. There are a lot of issues that schools deal with on a daily basis that get no attention because of, I mean, everybody is obviously worried about educating students, but there are other issues, mental health issues, some of the issues I'll talk about with one campaign that I did. So think about one of the reasons why you do a campaign is to build awareness and just to educate people. All right, let's see.
Shane, do you know, are you able to turn off your notifications? Because I noticed when I typed in that question or an urge for people to ask questions that it made a beep. Do you know if you're?
Let's see. I think. I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay. Well, just know that everybody, once you actually put something in there in the chat bar, it might just make a little beep. But that way, Shane, that way you'll know if somebody's asking a question. So it's all good.
All right. So a second reason why we do a big campaign or do a strategic campaign is just to move the needle. This is when you actually do it for tangible results, right? You need to sell something, you need to raise money, you need to increase applications, you need to increase enrollment. That's another reason why you would do a campaign. The next thing that a lot of us don't think about, but just to create a movement, right? To build an army of people who support you and back you and want to see your school district and your students and your staff be successful. And sometimes that's about creating, a hashtag that sticks. Sometimes that's about creating a message that sticks and creating a movement and getting other people to tell your story for you. And I'll talk a little bit about that in these case studies about how you can use what I call influencers to help move the needle as well. So Andrew was talking to you about this. I actually went back to the very first campaign that I ever did. And what I mean by that, this was my first school PR job that I started in 2007. And I was kind of a geek and got on social media right away. I saw back then hardly anybody was doing social media, especially at the public school level. People were scared of it. People thought it was a fad at that time. It's hard to believe that that was just a decade ago. But I saw some opportunities with it. So for the first kind of year and a half in my PR job, we had Facebook groups and Facebook pages. We had a Twitter. We were doing everything. You can kind of see up there in that area where we had the Twitter and Facebook and Flickr and, blogs and all that type of stuff. And so we really were doing it. But one of the things that I just kind of stopped and said, we need to do this in a more strategic way. So that didn't mean that we stopped doing the daily stuff that needed to be done on social media. But what I wanted to do was create a campaign that helped tell the story of our district in an organized fashion. And that's why we created the High Point Journeys campaign started planning it in 2008 and then launched it in 2009, where we chose 10 of our students. This was a career technical school district that serves juniors and seniors, and we have to recruit our students. It's a public school, but we have to recruit our students to attend there. And so we created this campaign called High Point Journeys. We interviewed and selected students to represent, to kind of be the faces of this campaign, and then we wanted to empower them to tell the stories. And so back at that time, it's funny, I was finding all these old images. You can see here are some of the kids that we chose for this campaign, and you can see that they have these flip cams that are now a relic, right? Like that, we didn't have the iPhones and stuff like that back then. So we bought each of these kids a flip cam. We bought them a digital camera, and they had to sign a contract. Their parents had to sign a contract. We trained them, and if they successfully completed documenting their stories for the school year, then they got to keep these devices, which they probably thought was a really good deal at the time. They didn't know that they were going to be able to they wouldn't need that flip cam after all. But one of the things we did with this campaign, we did all kinds of things, but after a few months with it, the first half of the school year, to keep it fresh, we added like 3 new bloggers. We were having so much success with it on social media and different ways that we integrated it, that we just added 3 new bloggers to it and kept the campaign fresh. The next year, we launched the second kind of season of this campaign called High Point Journeys, and we really tried to integrate all different types of aspects to it. And some of those aspects that we did, we integrated it into our full-scale marketing campaign. We created video that we used on YouTube. We actually bought TV spots and used these student stories that we had filmed. We used our bloggers, the ones that we chose for this campaign, to represent us in all aspects of our marketing plan. So we were creating different videos. The other thing we did with this was High Point Journeys then became kind of a recognized brand within our brand. And so we would use these student bloggers to be the face of every piece of collateral that we would do. And this is a smart way to kind of integrate it into a full-scale marketing campaign. So we would put these students, we'd have photo shoots, and we'd put them on our view books, we'd put them on our direct mail pieces. We did different advertisements with them. It's kind of funny to look at these screenshots of Facebook, because this is how Facebook looked back then. You had these tabs, but we integrated this into all aspects of social media. We posted the photos that they were taking on a Flickr site. We shared them on Facebook. We put their videos on a YouTube channel. We also used Twitter at the time, which was not, really that significant for us then. But, we did like these customized Facebook pages. I don't know if anybody remembers that, when you were able to do these kind of custom designs where you could actually integrate, different elements to it. So we really integrated this into our social media, our marketing, and all different aspects. Here's a screenshot of what the YouTube channel at that time was. And one of the best things about this was it was an opportunity to teach students about how to use social media as well. I don't think that was intended at the time, but it was really kind of pre-digital citizenship. I never had any problems with any of these students doing anything inappropriate. At that time, we kind of had these safety checks in place where I would post all of their content. They would create it, and then I would post it. Today that would be different, I think, where you would train students and give them access. Here's an example of a thing we did on social media back then on Facebook, where we, at the end of the journey, at the end of the year, we wanted to see who was people's favorite blogger. So we put this up on Facebook, and this was actually one of the most engaged posts that we did. Just fun stuff like that you could integrate. But one of the most impressive things of this campaign, this was something we started in 2009 with it, and it continued for several school years after. Even after I left the district, they kept kind of this High Point Journeys brand going for a while. But we would take students out on the road, different career fairs, different community functions. We created, obviously their backdrop where they could present, but they kind of just knew what they had to do, right? They were our spokespeople. They would tell the stories. They would talk about their journeys. You can see one of them using his flip cam to record an interview live there on the spot. So this was one of the impressive things. We would bring in students to present for our feeder schools that fed into our districts. They did radio interviews. They greeted guests when they came into the school. And this campaign really was driven to help increase awareness of this school district, but it was also to increase applications. We had a huge success with this, where our application numbers increased, our enrollment increased, and the name recognition and awareness just of our school district increased as well. It won awards, and it got a lot of attention because nobody had seen a campaign like this before in Ohio that a public school was doing. So other career centers, I think there were like 5 other career centers then that built their own campaigns after kind of what we did, right? They took the idea and the concept, and I know one career center called theirs Pursuit. One K-12 district did, they built kind of a senior internship experience. I think it was called Senior Experience with their district. So it was something that was replicated by other districts as well.
Shane, this is like so forward thinking to just see that you did this 10 years ago, and any one of us at any of our schools could totally do this today, and it'd be incredible. But the fact that you were doing it 10 years ago is awesome. So that's a kudos to you. But one question, did any of these kids end up pursuing some, journalism, digital media, anything like that based off all this awesome experience?
Yeah, so the girl, I can think of, the girl up in the top right corner there, getting filmed, Shelby, she joined the campaign her junior year, I remember. She was an information technology career tech student, and we had these school to work opportunities, and she actually worked in my in the marketing office with me her senior year. And then she actually after high school, she kind of switched gears, and she thought she wanted to be a nurse, but then she ended up launching her own website design company. So I have a campaign that I'm going to talk about at the end here that she actually designed the website for that campaign. So it actually came full circle to where I've used her as a contractor because that's kind of the career that she had started pursuing after that. So, and I know that she would speak to, like, a lot of these experiences helped her.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's awesome. Thank you.
So another campaign that I'm going to talk about to give you an example of how do you kind of create a movement and create interest in an event when you have no budget, right? So when I was running my company the first time, the Ohio Educational Technology Conference, which has about 5,000 people that attend this educational technology conference every year, we had worked with them the previous year. The next year, they really wanted to drive registrations. They wanted to increase the amount of registrations they had because it had dipped in the previous year. So they hired us again, and they said, increase it. They didn't tell me what to do. They just said increase registrations, increase awareness of this event. Oh, by the way, you don't have any budget to do that. And that happens a lot, especially in school PR. So one of the things we did was to create this idea of this Best Ed Tech campaign. So I think I skipped a slide here, but so we had this hashtag campaign that we were going to start. And one of the ideas and elements of this hashtag campaign with Best Ed Tech was we weren't just going to tweet about this stuff. We actually were going to engage some Ohio school districts to help us tell the story of educational technology in their buildings. So we contacted we had like 7 school districts. We had, so 7 weeks leading up to the event, we had these student takeovers where they took over our Vine account. Vine was new back then in 2013, 2014. They took over our Instagram, and they created content for us. These are some of the images that they had. So these students, we would contact one of their teachers. Their teacher was in charge of making sure that they did everything appropriate, and they just kind of captured how they were integrating educational technology in their schools at that time. And then we were able to kind of repurpose a lot of that content. The other thing we did with the Best Ed Tech hashtag to create statewide awareness was we decided to have these things called Best Ed Tech Awards. Now, these weren't official awards that a committee was going to vote on, or there were going to be official judges. But what we did was create like 10 categories. We allowed school districts to nominate themselves for these different categories. And then what we did was we would create, but then the school districts had to market, right? They had to use social media to spread the word to get people to vote for them for these awards. So if they submitted an entry and we vetted that entry, then it made it onto kind of this landing page, which was a Google site at the time. And they had to promote. We created different social media graphics for them so they could share it on their website, on their Twitter accounts, on their social media channels. So you have to imagine we created this kind of awards, the Best Ed Tech Awards, where we were asking teachers and administrators and school districts from around the state to kind of share this on their social media channels. And this is how you can use influencers to kind of tell this story for you and to spread this word when you don't have any money. One of the other things we did during this was we identified like 50 ed tech bloggers and different teachers, and we invited them to pen different ideas on a shared Pinterest board. And we also would send information out to these bloggers and say like, hey, this is information about OETC. Will you share this on your blog? So then we created this experience where these ed tech bloggers were then talking about the Best Ed Tech Awards, and they were sharing stuff about the conference and who was going to be speaking at the conference. So you're creating this whole kind of word of mouth that spreads using social media. We didn't spend any money on this, and it was a highly successful thing for us. Some of the results from this campaign, and there were other elements to it as well. It was pretty intricate, but we had over 1,500 uses in that kind of I think it was like a 2-month window where we were doing this campaign. We had over 1,500 uses of that hashtag. We had a 66% engagement rate on Pinterest. There were more than 18,000 online votes cast for the Best Ed Tech Awards. During the conference, we were trending on Twitter. You can see the people using the actual conference hashtag. But we had all these pieces of content that were created by students and other schools. Even if they weren't part of the takeovers, they could also use the hashtag and share photos. And then we kind of created this hub. We used Tumblr at the time, and we would take their content and just put it all in one place so people could see all of that content. So we had these influencers that were sharing content. We had schools sharing content. We had then the school districts would put out press releases about the winners of the Best Ed Tech Awards. At the event, we would do tweet ups where we were engaging people. So it was just kind of this intricate campaign where we had no money to do anything, but we created opportunities for schools and others to share the content. And that's a big piece where you can kind of move the needle and get tangible results and also create a movement. I mean, we were creating a movement where we were showing people throughout the state how other schools were using educational technology at the time.
So I got a question on that, Shane.
Yep.
So obviously not a lot of budgetary dollars, but a lot of time involved in something like that. So do you have any, kind of summary of what the time commitment that it took to kind of dream up something like that and then to carry it out?
Yeah, so we were engaged by OATC, which runs that conference. They're out of the Ohio Department of Higher Education. That's who runs that conference in the state. And they engaged us, I think it was at the end of October. And so we had, the conference was in the beginning of February. So basically we had November, December, and January to carry out this campaign. So not a whole lot of time. One of the things I had a contractor I brought on to work with me to help with some of the pitching of the bloggers and creating lists of people to reach out to manage some of those elements. The other thing I did was bring on some interns. And we had done that in the previous year where in Columbus, we have this thing called Columbus Internships. It's a website, and so I posted this, and I found some great college interns that were willing to, and I paid them, and I brought them on. I didn't pay them a lot, but I brought them on for the experience. And so for that particular campaign, we had 2 Ohio University seniors who did a lot of that work for us.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So the next campaign I'm going to talk about is a campaign where you're really trying to build awareness, right? It's obviously we also wanted to increase applications for our school district at Toles Career and Technical Center at the time. But one of the things we also wanted to do was we wanted to change the stigma impression of what people had about career technical education. And it's really hard to move the needle when people have a baked-in impression of what something is, right? Like we understood that people, and we didn't just assume this was stuff that people were telling us and that our research showed, that people thought only a certain type of student went to career tech, that you couldn't go to college if you did career tech. We wanted to change all that, and one of the things we did was we started this campaign by producing a documentary that followed 8 of our alumni after high school. So we used a production company to film these students, and then we created a campaign around this documentary called Landed. One of our goals, obviously, was to change mind about career technical education and also our particular district. And the key for any of this stuff when you're doing a campaign is that it opens up possibilities to benefit more students, right? It was very important to us to give more opportunities to students and to parents for the type of education that career technical schools offered. So obviously, with any campaign, when it's going to be this kind of large campaign, you want to use research to help kind of guide the way, right? You don't want to just sit there and say like, oh, I think that this is what people think. So we used all different types of means to get some information to help us build this campaign, data that we already had. We did some focus groups. We did some surveys. We used Facebook, some private Facebook groups, and some parent messages that were and conversations that were happening. Here were some of the things that people were saying from our focus groups. And one of the words that kept coming up was the stigma. So we understood that career technical education and Toles, the school that I was working at the time, had a stigma. We also understood that those people had that stigma from their time in school. So we needed to kind of work to change the impression. One, we had different tactics. This was a campaign that we launched, I think it was in November, December, and we carried it out through that school year. But we had the 21-minute kind of mini documentary. We created 1-minute features, video features on each of these alumni. At the time on Instagram, you could only put 15-second videos on, so we actually created a 15-second Instagram series that was 8 episodes that featured each of these alumni. And then, of course, we used kind of the tactics that I talked about at the Best Ed Tech, where we reached out to influencers to get them to share information about this campaign. And we also used the media to get word out. One of the things we did were we would submit guest blogs to kind of national sites, if you will. Getting Smart was one of those where we kind of introduced this campaign with an essay called It's Time We Talk About Career Tech. Here are some screenshots of some of the influencers that we targeted where we wanted them to tweet about the documentary premiering. We kind of made an event out of this documentary premiering. And so, you know, we targeted chambers of commerce, we targeted the media, we targeted people who were featured in the documentary, some career technical student organizations. And for the most part, they did it. We wrote the posts for them in advance. We had tweets written for them. We had Facebook posts written for them in advance, and we kind of sent them in a Google folder, all of this stuff in one place. We had graphics prepared for them. And that's one of the things when you're working with influencers, which could be parents and students or community members, is to make it easy for them to be able to share. So here's just some of the assessment, and I think one of the things I wanted to just share the assessment on this particular campaign was you want to be able to measure the results of any campaign you run, and that can be through different ways. We gauged this through documentary views. You can see we had different benchmarks that we were shooting for. We didn't always hit them, but we were still happy with them. We did Facebook. We boosted posts on Facebook to draw more attention to the videos that we produced and to the campaign we were doing. And those numbers were even better once we boosted. And one of the things that happened as a result of this was we saw a huge increase in our applications, especially for one of the districts we were targeting. You know, we had a goal of 25% increase in our applications. From one district, we ended up with a 61% increase in that district, and that was just amazing. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, so somebody asked how you, somebody's asking, please turn your phone, turn down your phone, maybe volume, but I think you can turn down your own volume on your computer, it should be. How did you find your influencers, and then did you do this during National CTE Month?
So we did it in kind of 2 ways. We launched the documentary part first. We kind of reached out to the influencers ahead of the documentary. We debuted the documentary on we built kind of a blog site where the documentary was going to premiere exclusively. And then, you know, we put it out on YouTube and all those other channels after that. But we reached out to the influencers in advance of that, and then premiered the documentary. And then in February, that's when we again reached out to those influencers again to share the fact that we were going to do we were going to push out information during National Career Technical Education Month. And that's when we debuted all the 1-minute features throughout that month. And we
okay, but then you did it prolonged after that too.
Correct. Yeah. And the thing about it was we created these videos and we were still using them the following year as well. Like we were able to keep using the content that we created for the campaign. I mean, you could still, I'm not there anymore, but you could still go find those videos and I think that they would still be just as impactful.
Yeah, and the comment was, and I'm sorry, viewer 66, but anytime he gets a notification, it is dinging, and we tried to shut that off earlier, and we can't. So just every time you chat in a question, we are going to hear that button. And if he turned down his volume altogether, he wouldn't be able to hear me ask my question. So we're sorry about that. But again, once we finish up with the webinar, we'll have open questions. So if you want to keep your questions to the end, that would be great. And then just another question, Shane, is just how did you determine who the influencers were? I think you talked about it a little bit, but.
Yeah, that's part of it, is you have to kind of think about who is influential in your community. It varies based on what kind of campaign you're doing. Obviously, for that Best Ed Tech, we targeted bloggers who wrote about educational technology. For the Landed campaign at Tolles, we targeted economic development people who we knew were supporters of the school and supported what we were doing. We targeted maybe influential moms who had their social media followings and could share stuff like that. We also targeted people who had a vested interest in the advancement of career technical education in general. So it varies from campaign to campaign, but that's one of the things you have to do when you're using influencers, is think about who you want to target, and does it make sense for them to be sharing information about that particular campaign? Is that something that's true to their online brand?
Awesome. Good stuff.
Last campaign I'm going to talk about, and this was really the last campaign I did at a school district I was working at, and I'm most proud of this work, although this was probably one of my, what I would say was the least successful campaign because of some other issues that came up during the school year when we were trying to do a lot of the stuff with this. But this was an advocacy campaign we did called True Pursuit. We kind of built on what we had done with Landed, but we really wanted to target our partner schools and parents to have kind of this honest conversation about what is life really like after high school. We had these themes we chose out, right? We wanted to talk about the student loan crisis. We wanted to talk about college affordability. We wanted to talk about, are we really helping students find their true pursuits when we're pushing them all to go to a four-year university without any consideration for the fact that they might not need to go to a four-year university. So these were some pretty big issues to tackle. And so one of the things we did was we thought, well, what action do we want people to take from this campaign? And these were some of the things that we suggested that people do to be part of the solution, right? To educate themselves, to learn about their options, to ask questions, to give their kids the opportunity to play and make and do, but also to advocate for not just a college pathway, but for a career pathway, because at the end of the day, that's where we all end up. We obviously created another documentary for this campaign, and we interviewed some great people, but really this campaign was something that we wanted to use as a conversation starter for these different groups: parents, communities, business leaders. We targeted guidance counselors with this campaign as well. And we really asked this question of, where did we veer off course in preparing students for the reality of what's ahead? These were some of just the research that we did. It was important to have facts behind all of the messaging that we did. So there was some research involved in putting this information together. We talked about, the future workforce, student loan debt. One of the things I learned a lot in this process too, by researching, that I didn't know that the majority of students in colleges now are in their mid-20s or older. I think we have this idea that colleges are just full of like 18 to 21-year-olds, when that's just not the case. That is not the reality of college. So we had a lot of great data to back up this campaign. So the campaign, and you can see once that thing disappears, at the bottom, we use the hashtag Let's Talk Career, because again, this was about having a conversation. We tied it into our aspects that we were already doing in our district, right? Our marketing, our admissions, and or advocacy that we were already doing. We had a website that we built. That student I talked about from High Point Journeys, she actually built a standalone microsite for this campaign. We had the documentary piece that we could use and break down for various content. We did influencer and community outreach like we did in the Landed campaign, but we tied it into our existing campaigns. And that's something you can do when you do kind of these different separate campaigns, is tie it into stuff that you're already doing and kind of cross-promote. So these were some of the results that happened from this campaign. One of the things I was most proud of this campaign is that we, convinced, one of the things you always had to do is convince schools to send their sophomores to visit, just to see our campus. And so we had more sophomores visit the Toles campus than any of the previous 40 plus years in the school's history. But we engaged a lot of parents and community leaders and business partners during this campaign. It was part of our marketing effort, part of our admissions effort, and again, part of our advocacy effort. And what I mean by that is we hosted a lot of events where we had chamber people, economic development people, politicians, community leaders, parents, and anytime we had the opportunity to share the documentary and then have a conversation about it, we did that. We created obviously not everybody was going to watch, I think this documentary was 27 minutes. They're not going to all sit there and watch that long of a video. So we actually broke the documentary down into 10 chapters. We created a community discussion guide. We created conversation starters. And just so you know, I'm going to have all of these links and all of this information that will be shared in a blog post, I think next week. So you'll have access to all of this type of stuff. But one of the things we did was we provided resources. So if other people wanted to show the documentary or have conversations about this, we created, discussion questions for them and conversation starters for them. We created a resource guide for them. We created this great film with it. You can watch it on YouTube. It's called True Pursuit. On Scene Productions was the company that filmed it. It was filmed over the course of 6 months. You can see that 6 locations, 3 states. They went to Oklahoma to film at Moore Norman Career Center. And this was really the core piece of the campaign that we built everything else around, right? And that's what I suggest, is that you build campaigns around content. Obviously, we wanted to have lots of conversations, so we promoted the film to different groups. We created a community discussion guide. We tied it into our legislative outreach. And we, would always show film or the clips with business and industry. We tied it into our marketing, again, our admissions campaign. This is a view book. We do a view book every year that we mail out to all of the sophomores, and so we tied in that True Pursuit theme to that. This was, we debuted the documentary actually at an off-site location at a kind of a community recreation center that has a theater called the Abbey Theater. We invited a list of like 200 people that we thought were influencers to watch the documentary for the first time. So these are just clips of people sharing about that night. That was part of my favorite thing, was debuting the documentary. We debuted the documentary, and then afterwards we had a panel discussion with the film's director, with my superintendent at the time, and with Beth Probst, who was a parent influencer and was featured in the film. And then after that, we had a reception where our culinary arts students served hors d'oeuvres to the guests. And this is just screenshots of email blasts that went out, inviting people to watch the film or to join us for the exclusive screening, all of that type of stuff. And this is another example of how you integrate this into all the different elements. So that's a lot about campaigns and just a fast view of those campaigns. I'm going to summarize all of that type of stuff in a blog post for Andrea that comes out next week. But one of the things that I would say as you think about doing campaigns, that big is really relative. I've done campaigns that have lasted a week that I thought of in like 2 days' time. I remember we did we opened up our online application for sophomores to apply for the next school year. It was a pretty big deal. So we did a campaign where we used social media for like a week. We called it Decision Week. And the whole thing we did was just create different graphics and had different messages that we wanted to get out during that week to really hype up that week. So you don't always have to do these campaigns that take a year or 6 months or 3 months. Just keep in mind that big is relative. You can do a mini campaign about something relatively quickly. And I know not everybody always has the time to plan and measure. I did my accreditation in public relations this past year and earned that in January. So I guess I'm supposed to say the party line that, you research, you plan, you implement, you evaluate. I really believe those things, but sometimes you don't have the opportunity to sit down and do a full-scale plan. But I think in some way, no matter what you're doing with your campaigns, you always need to have some sort of checklist or bullet points or however you work to plan it out, to have in mind. You can always change and be flexible, but you definitely want to measure it because you want to be able to prove to people that this type of stuff works. And then the third takeaway today is that it has to be multi-channel. And what I mean by that is social media is a big element of all of these campaigns, but the content behind these campaigns was what mattered, right? Like the students taking over and creating photos and videos, seeding a hashtag, and then taking that content and using it in different ways for different channels. Your print collateral, your direct mail, your website, things that you're already doing every single year. How can you tie this in and make it multi-channel? So with that, I'm already over I was trying to get done by 12:45 so we could come to this. Questions. I'll let people ask questions.
You did really well, and it's such good information. I can't wait to watch that documentary with my husband because we have 6 kids, and I don't know if 4-year school is for all of them. I'm going to really enjoy watching that. Okay, one of the questions that came in is, we have a 2-person communications department for a district with 28 different campuses. Research is important for a campaign. What would you suggest be the best research to start off with?
Say the first part of that question again.
Well, they have a 2-person communications department for a district with 28 different campuses.
Okay.
So it's big. So how do you do research? Where do you start?
Well, so I always like to start with focus groups. It's an easy way to get some qualitative data real quick. And, that's just talking to students, like putting 25 students in a room or 10, getting some parents. I guess it depends on what the campaign's about, where you would start with your research. But focus groups are always, to me, I think, an easy way to put together some data that then can help you formulate different survey questions that you could use. You could do a Google survey. Obviously, that's non-scientific data, but we did a lot of that. And then just like listening to what people are talking about on social media, right? Like follow people, go in those Facebook groups and listen to parents, listen to what people are saying like that. But I guess short answer to that is focus groups is probably where I would start. And then your own data. A lot of those campaigns were just formed, especially Landed and True Pursuit, was we had data, our enrollment data, we looked at withdrawal data, we looked at all different types of data that we already had that we didn't have to recreate. Okay,
I'm just going to reclaim the presenter role quick. And I think this is going to work out okay. Hang on. Because that way we won't have to hear your buzzing, but I can still unmute you. So I think it'll work out better. You can hear me again, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that was great. Okay, another question. Do you feel documentary or video is usually the best way to go for campaigns?
No, I don't think that you have to have a documentary film to run a campaign. Those are like 2 of my most recent ones. I think video is pretty powerful now, and I think the data would showcase that video is pretty important and powerful. So no, I don't think you have to have it to do a campaign. Again, it just depends what your goals are. With that Best Ed Tech campaign, for instance, we didn't have any money to produce a video, and I don't like to create kind of cheap looking videos. So the best thing to do for that instance was to allow students to create a lot of the content that we were able to use, and to let the schools and the people that were going to attend the conference kind of help share that story.
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes I break down, campaigns. You gave a lot of ideas. Even, if you want to talk about, I'm from a super small school, Shane, of 300 kids. So I graduated high school with 32 people in my class, and that was a big class. And you think about small schools trying to compete with maybe bigger schools, and maybe you're trying to get out a story of, look, we have great graduates that have these opportunities, and they came from this small school. So what if you even had a little, article or a blog, and you create a graphic with that, story with it that ends up going up on maybe every other week you're sharing one of those things. So, campaigns can be, in a lot of shapes and forms, and so some of them might be as simple as that.
Exactly. I mean, a campaign can be like, oh, for the entire school year, we're going to do, we're going to post 2 videos each month on Facebook that we record of our teachers talking about their experiences, and they're like to introduce teachers to the community, and so they know, who's working with their students, and to personalize them a little bit more, or something like that. It doesn't have to always be as intricate as a lot of these are, and that's why one of the takeaways today is that, big is relative.
Right. Nick has a great question from La Crosse. For the no budget folks, what was a ballpark total cost for this campaign, it's the one with the documentary. So the documentary, the print materials, hosted events, food, beverage. Yep.
So I always get this question because I presented about like the Landed campaign in particular. So I was blessed to have a budget. Most career technical schools have budgets because we have to recruit our students. I actually split this campaign between 2 fiscal years, so that's how I was able to do it. But the total cost of the Landed campaign, I think, ended up being around $50,000 that I spent on everything. But I've always told people, I remember presenting this to the Alabama School Public Relations group, and obviously they get asked that question, well, we don't have a budget, so we can't do it. And I would talk about, well, think about how you can finance some of these campaigns. I talked about, obviously, the message that we were sharing is important to business and industry. So I always thought I should have probably sought sponsors to help finance the documentary, to help finance the campaign, to donate to the campaign and to be a part of it in that way. So you can think about alternative sources of funding. But the other thing is that I told people, you don't have to a lot of you have TV production classes, you can involve students, you can get interns, and you can create these different elements without spending anything. It's really, at the heart of it, it all comes down to being creative and strategic about it.
That's a great idea. Okay, is it possible for you to share the planning documents for some of the campaigns described today?
Yeah, so I will share. So the Landed campaign, is something that it won a gold medallion from the National School Public Relations Association, and so I had to submit a full, everything with that, the data, every element. So that's one of the pieces that I can share for that Landed campaign. And then I might have some stuff, the High Point Journeys campaign, I don't have that anymore. But yeah, I'll share whatever I have.
Okay, that'll be great. And that'll probably all come out in the blog article that'll be going up next week. So you'll get all of that. Sheen, and if you have any more questions, please jot those in because we've still got a lot of viewers. But I really see you, and it was evident today, just as kind of this visionary when it comes to being able to tell these stories of these schools and using campaigns in a lot of different ways. Looking forward, what are maybe some of the trends or things that you see coming down the pipeline, in our climate, in 2018 that schools should be paying attention to? Could you share?
So I think I just did a presentation on this in Oregon in the spring, and some school districts I've seen a lot of districts actually do campaigns around these topics. I think one of the things you're going to have to start paying more attention to, if you're not already, are kind of these social issues that are affecting our society, because they leak into our schools, right? Schools are a microcosm of society. And so race issues, safety issues, mental health issues, these are the types of issues that I think are not necessarily coming down the pike, but I mean, they're already here, and some schools are now addressing them. You saw some of with suicide and all that type of stuff. Schools are now addressing a lot of this. I judged 3 state NSPRA chapters, their awards, and I saw a lot of different campaigns that they were running around mental health and suicide prevention. So I think that's something that in schools, it's not going to be about necessarily just the fluff, right? You're going to need to tackle some of these society issues and create education and awareness about them, and advocacy for students and all of that.
Yeah, and how you're supporting your students. I think it's anti-bullying month, and there's a lot of talk even about the use of social media with students, and if you see something, make sure you say something, and there's a lot of opportunities and proactive measures that schools are doing, and you can use social media campaigns, a lot of different campaigns of communicating out to make sure that people are aware of what you have. So, well, we're right at the 1 hour mark. I don't have any other questions now. So I learned a ton, a lot of great ideas, using student voice and really being able to educate and, like you said, even trying to change stigmas, the research that goes into it beforehand. And then, like we said, we're going to share a lot of these direct links out in the blog article that will come out next week, which is going to be around October 7th or so, maybe 9th. So watch for that on my blog, and we'll make sure to get that out to all of you. Any final thoughts today, Shane?
No, I would just say if you have any questions about any of these things, you can reach out to me. Andrea gave you my Twitter handle. And of course, in the blog, I know you're going to send out this presentation. You can probably include my email and contact information if anybody wants to reach out to ask any specific questions.
Yes, I will. I'll do that. I'll make sure to include everything there, Shane. As always, really great stuff, and I appreciate everybody for hanging out today and learning all about this. So stay tuned. You'll get the recording and that helpful blog. Keep doing what you're doing. It matters. I always kind of like my slide, we need to make the positive so loud that the negative becomes almost impossible to hear, and your efforts that each of you are doing help do that each and every day. So thank you guys so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.